Welcome to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast and community. This is a place for horsewomen to experience belonging, breakthrough, and becoming. I'm your host, Lisa Pulliam, founder of StableMinded.us, mental health professional, second season equestrian, and author of Finding Calm, helping riders navigate through fear and anxiety. The Liberated Equestrian is devoted to the mission of being set free and experiencing breakthroughs in every aspect of our horsemanship and humanship. This is all about mind, body, heart, and soul care for ourselves, our horses, and the people we do life with, so that we can grow together as a community of emotionally and relationally healthy horsewomen. So find a comfortable spot, take a deep breath, and let's embark on this journey of becoming liberated equestrians together. Well, this is not the episode that I thought was going to be coming after season 1 of Liberated Equestrian. I know at the time I shared with you that I felt this sense that I needed to hit pause, and I was curious about the direction that would come, if there would be a season 2, or if I would be heading in a new direction. I was just really unsure. I shared with you how I felt that God was really awakening a desire for me to do more in the area of integrating faith with neuropsychology. But in all of that, I had no idea I would be where I am right now. And this is not the beginning of season 2. This is actually what I'm going to call an epilogue, I think would be the appropriate word, the chapter after the book has been written. And I'm doing it to bring some closure and also some hope. So for those of you who have been following along with StableMinded and who have been following along on the Liberated Equestrian social media or StableMinded social media on my email list, you know that this season has been really challenging. And the season I'm talking about is from when I fell off of Kodiak Jack through now when I'm recording this, which is December 30th, 2025. And sometimes we go through hard that is like event-based, and sometimes we go through hard that is like death by a thousand razor cuts, as they say, or knife cuts. And I feel like this had been a little bit of both in this season for me. After the fall off of Kodiak, I definitely really hit a wall with my physical health. I'm still not healed from the injury. I believe that the best way to describe it is that I bruised my seat bone so badly that the deepness of those bruises are still not healed, even though I look like I'm completely functioning. But the amount of time that I can sit, the amount of time that I can walk, how I feel at the end of a day or in the middle of the day is definitely impacted. Been in physical therapy, trying to work on my strength, and with my connective tissue disorder, EDS, if you are familiar with that, or Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, what happens is as soon as I lose some muscle, my ligaments start to take the toll, and then the aches and the pains and the out of alignment of my joints starts moving and wobbling all over my body. So in my recovery, it is like chasing the pain, so to speak. So that was all happening. At the same time that was happening, we were going through a health crisis with my husband that is currently stable, but it's not something that we're talking about yet, but it's there. And it has been like jarring, I think is the best way to put it, that we needed to put life in perspective. And then we came through that, like the chaos of that, we ended up putting an offer in on a property that we thought was going to be the farm at Sela. And the way that that went about from no to yes to no was definitely an emotional roller coaster. Taught us a lot, really binded us. We feel really connected through what we have gone through, Stephen and I. And then in the middle of all of that, Kodiak Jack, my beloved horse, started to just have random things happen to him, like a swollen sheath, like a, you know, excited herd situation that got him kicked. The run-of-the-mill things that horses show up with. And then he had a puncture wound in his eye that we thought was a cut that never was healing. And so it was week after week of like vet appointment for something different, trying something different. Meanwhile, the rest of him was also really declining. And all those little things were really random. But when he started getting really defensive in his behavior, I knew that there was something more going on, and honestly began the conversation with the vet of, how do we make this boy comfortable? The answer isn't stifles and hocks. And oh, we did an SI injection. So we had injected his hocks and stifle the previous spring, and then we injected his SI in October, hoping to resolve the toe dragging, hoping to resolve some of the hind end stiffness that we were seeing in him, just to keep him comfortable, right? Like I've never had any great aspirations for Kodiak other than to enjoy a trail ride. Honestly, it's been my dream, my desire to do trail obstacles with him. Um, but there was also a part of his personality that started declining in a way that you only see looking back. There was some spookiness. So we did what everybody does in these situations. We treated for ulcers, which in the past, when we've dealt with issues, injections and ulcers have resolved for a period of time. And it just wasn't getting better, and he wasn't getting less defensive. And I went down the wild goose chase to try to figure out what on earth is wrong with him. And we ultimately tested vitamin E, and he was low on vitamin E. And so, for those of you who are not aware of the impact of vitamin E in a horse's diet, it is very significant. As soon as grasses die off, vitamin E tends to go down. Some horses are not affected by it, but other horses are significantly affected by it and need vitamin E supplement more than what is just in grain, or just like they need a liquid form of the supplement to balance that out. But studies have shown that progressive deficiency in vitamin E can contribute to neurological issues. And so, because of that vitamin E being low, I went down a wild goose chase and discovered that Dr. Amy Johnson out of Penn Vet Hospital in New Bolton, Pennsylvania, is one of the premier researchers in equine neurological disorders. And honestly, I reached out to her at that point to see if she could utilize Kodiak for testing, because I was starting to see his history lining up with equine neurological disorders, and recognizing, hey, we got a lot of things going on the same way. And the more research I did, the more, and I'm talking not just like, you know, the layperson's articles that you read, like when you Google like equine neurological disorders, um, but I'm talking about like research articles, which, because of my master's in clinical counseling, part of my work, my study was learning how to find research articles, how to discern if they're credible research articles, how to look at sources, how to read the metrics and see if how things are being conducted is actually evidence-based, so to speak. And so I went with my studious hat on into that direction and really came to the conclusion that a lot of the issues we've been dealing with for Cody for many years has to do with equine neurological disorders, um, and kind of a general category of that. So you can't, for a certain type of equine neurological disorder, you can't qualify it or quantify it or even test for it until after death, through a necropsy, where you can look at the spinal fluid or the brain lesions. And that is not something I opted to do financially, emotionally, at this point. Um, but the evidence of behaviors and how he responded to treatments over 3 years and didn't respond to treatments has left us seeing a picture that is, we can't say definitively clinically sound for equine neurological disorder, but certainly is the best explanation. Because the things that we did do to try to resolve things like toe dragging and stumbling, and tremors on the front legs, and um, hypersensitivity to touch, and a variety of symptoms match where Cody was at the entire time I had him. And one of the things in one of Amy Johnson's articles that really struck me and broke my heart was the factor of what's called oxidative stress, meaning what's happening in the environment around the horse at various points of their lifespan, and how that can be a contributing factor to a neurological degenerative disorder. And Kodiak Jack fit that picture as well, right? Like, he raced for 5 years and then was sent to slaughter. Was there something wrong with him at that time that the folks who owned him thought the best thing was to put this horse down and just didn't choose to do it in a humane way? Then he ended up in basically a neglect situation for over 7 years where he was not trained and not handled. And by the time he came into my life 3.5 years ago, there was evidence of malnutrition in his hooves. Those feet tell the story, don't they? And so we know for a fact that he was malnourished, and that he was not properly cared for from a farrier perspective. And so, how many years was he potentially vitamin E deficient? And then he came into my life, and I did everything I could to give this horse the world and make him comfortable. Saddle fittings, bit and bridle fittings, um, supplements, nutrition consults, acupuncture, chiropractic care at various points, body work, change of the tools I used in order to make touch sensitive, positive reinforcement to do all of that. And yet everything in my power, nutrition, grain, right? Everything that I could do in my power to make this horse comfortable, including changing how I rode him and where I rode him and giving him a diverse experience as much as possible that stimulated the brain and the body to work on his proprioception and to make his muscles stronger and to engage his brain. It didn't matter to It did matter and it didn't matter because there was underlying issues that I could not fix, that no one could fix. And when I look at that story, his story, um, and I see all that I did, I do not regret a day of it. Kodiak Jack made me a better horsewoman. He gave me eyes to see things I could never see before I met him, as I learned how to really, really listen to him and notice every cue. I noticed every flick of the ear and blink of the eye when I was looking at it, right? The swish of the tail. I knew what swish meant okay and what swish meant no. The way he would bite at his food or eat the hay, or the speed and the intensity at which he would graze. I could tell when he would tolerate, and I could tell when he would choose. And I mean, this horse taught me so much about how to read body language in the most gentle and kind way. That horse, for the amount of pain I think he was suffering with, and the way he treated me to the very last day, I can't even tell you the gratitude I have in my heart at what I believe was a kind, kind soul deep within, and that he knew I was trying, and that's all he asked, right? He didn't ask for anything more than that. Uh, but it also became my responsibility to listen. And in listening, I came to see what he was saying in ways that maybe some other people didn't see or didn't know. And yet, I learned how to use my voice and get beyond the fact that I thought I was just a horse hypochondriac. Um, I learned how to listen to the gut and the felt sensation I had within me because it was in the non-challenging issues with Cody that I also heard him so loud and clear, and it was proven by his response to me that he made me more confident. Honestly, he made me into an advocate not only for him but for myself. And so because of that, I was able to start using my voice with people like my trainer and the vet and the farrier and the people around me to say, this is what I think Kodiak needs. And little bit by little bit, they came to see that I was actually right because they could also see the result of it. One little minor thing, when I was out with my after I had fallen off of him and I couldn't ride, I went a deep dive into learning about bits and where they're supposed to be placed in the mouth. And I came to Caitlin, my trainer, and I said, I think we need to drop Cody's bit like one one hole on the strap, even though you're supposed to have these two wrinkles. I don't think you're supposed to have these two wrinkles based on what this guy is saying. Dolphin is the bit fitter that I was paying attention to. It's his last name. And I said, I'd like to drop it a hole and see if he will hold the bit instead of bracing against it. And if that will change some of his raciness and resistance. And she's like, okay. And so best person to try it at the time was her because I wasn't riding and she never had issues. I shouldn't say she never had issues. She had the same issues, but they weren't as pronounced as the ones that I had. And she was able to see like, yeah, that made a difference for Kodiak, and he was able to be more relaxed and more um, engaged using his body with her. And then when I got back into riding him, I was able to experience that. And so it was like little things like that I would learn and study and apply and make this horse's life better and earned my confidence in the process, so to speak. So there were two really wonderful experiences with Cody. And if you read anything I've written about him since his passing on December 29th, I tell these two stories and I want to tell them in more detail because they're so precious to me. When I adopted Cody, my dream was to go trail riding with him. And we tried once, we tried a second time. Our first trail ride was a horrible experience. He was not fit and ready for it, and neither was I. Our second trail ride was manageable, but he was still kind of hot, and it wasn't a relaxed experience for me. And so the time had come and I'm like, I really want to do this. And part of growing in my confidence with him was riding outside of the arena in the upper grass area independently by myself, like just the two of us, mounting at different places around the property so that I could get used to getting on and off, not in a confined arena, riding out in the neighborhood. I mean, we were mastering all of that, right? And so there's one day that I was riding him, and I often would do something that Karen Rolfe teaches, which is kind of drop the rein and pick a point and see if the horse will take you to that point. And so I do that a lot with Kodiak. But I also play a game with him where I drop the rein and I try not to put my attention anywhere. And I say, you pick. And this one day we were riding out in the field, and I was pretty sure he was going to pick going out in the neighborhood. Well, he walked straight over to my friend's trailer, put his nose to nose up against the trailer, turned his head back at me. And if you ever saw Cody do this, like when he turns his head back, he looks like he's giving you the stink eye. The white of his eye would really show dramatically. And he turned his eye and looked back at me. I'm like, "You're ready? You want to go?" And I was like, all right, uh, let's ride. And then, I wanted to test it again. So I took him back around on the grass and we rode and rode. And then I dropped the rein and I said, okay. You pick, where do you want to go? And sometimes he would pick the round pen, sometimes he would pick the neighborhood, sometimes he would pick going back to the barn, sometimes he would pick randomly, almost never going back into the arena, but he picked going to the trailer again. So that night I reached out to Zoe, who owns the trailer, and was waiting for me to get to the place that I could be able to do this, and just anyone that could ride out with her, as she was working on that too. And I said, I think Code's ready. And we planned a trip for that weekend. We got the horses ready. They walked right onto the trailer. We drove less than 10 minutes up the road to the nearest place to go trail riding. Great training ground for trail riding. And got off, like they unloaded, bridled, and like we were there without a trainer. So this was a pretty big deal for the two of us with our horses. And we had the most beautiful ride. And we had multiple rides this past summer where I was even able to trot him on one of the stretches. We were able to do multiple miles in that loop, and we just had a ball. And I was telling my husband this when he and I walked the trail yesterday. Uh, I said, horses tend to pick up the speed when they're heading home, when they're heading back to the head of the trail or back to the trailer. And that's usually like a tell, like they're kind of done, they're ready to go back. That boy never wanted to go back. He just loved it. And I think he knew I loved it. And I was hoping for so much more of that. But I'm so glad that we had that milestone together that came through trust and came through building our relationship. And that we did get one more out there after I fell, and he wasn't right. The the spookiness that started probably slightly before I fell off of him, maybe contributed to my fall off of him, even though the environment was reasonable for why he spooked. Um, it was not characteristic of him to spook at the time. And that very much could be part of that neurological decline that he had been going through. So my last ride on him is the other thing I spoke about in what I've written was November 20th. Um, he had been getting fussier and fussier at the tacking and grooming, especially grooming. And I had this sense of like, okay, we've done the ulcer treatment. That's not it. He has some of these stiff joints and issues. Is that really what we're dealing with? Is that the problem? At this point, I wasn't thinking neurological. Uh, and and then I thought, or are we getting into a behavior issue that he's just starting to act a certain way on the cross ties? And why I didn't know, but I just thought, well, maybe that's the issue. And I really feel like God prompted me with this to go back to the basics. And I decided that instead of grooming and tacking him on the cross ties, I was going to dress up like I was going to ride, get all my stuff on. And I brought all the tack out to the arena and put it on the fence and brought my grooming stuff out to the arena. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to do it there. And I groomed him, and he was a little bit better with grooming than inside. I thought, okay, that's pretty promising. And then we played at Liberty, and he at one point took off for me and went to the gate. And I was like, yeah, okay, standard. He doesn't really love the arena, and so he went to the gate. And I was at the other half of the arena, and I was like, all right, you done? And he looked at me, and I looked at him. I got that stink eye look again. And he walked like 10 feet, 15 feet over to the tack, sniffed and licked the tack, which he's a licker, and then looked back at me with that eye again. And I said, oh, are you telling me you want to ride? And he looked at me. I'm like, really? And he turned and walked to me. So he left the gate and left the tack, which if you know Cody, when he gets like in this like checked out place, that's not what he does. He walked all the way over to me, and I scrubbed him and I stood with him, and I was like, all right, well, if this is what you want, then I have like one condition. I'm not putting a halter and lead rope on you and holding you while I attack you. You're gonna have to just stand there. And I'm telling you, this horse stood there so quietly. He walked back to the gate with me, walked over to the fence. I put on all his tack, did the catch the bridle, which I had taught him how to do, that he would lower his head, open his mouth. Of course, he knew a treat was coming, put that bridle in. And then I was like, all right, and we walked to the mounting block. It is the only time, maybe, that I did not have to add any pressure, wave a stick or anything to have him walk side by side with me over to the mounting block. And I get on him and I'm thinking, this is it. This is going to be the greatest ride because he chose it and he must be feeling better. And maybe it was just a behavior thing that was happening inside the barn. And I thought it was going to be the beginning of whatever was in his system getting out of his system. But he didn't feel great under saddle. He was stiff. He was struggling. Uh, we did get a really great canter. I giggled like a schoolgirl, like I would do on him often at the canter, but he wasn't well. And I didn't know that until, over a month later when I look back and I'm like trying to find in my videos, when was the last time I even rode him and realized that was the last ride that he gave me. He gave it to me. He gave me the most beautiful gift God gave me, the most beautiful gift in Cody, to learn how to build a relationship with a horse from start to finish, in which I learned how to communicate his language and he learned how to communicate mine. And that there was truly consent and not compliance. I would say for both of us, like 90% of the time. Obviously, in every relationship, there is some compliance. There are times in which you just say, okay, yeah, I don't want to, but I'm going to, right? The times I didn't want to ride in the rain, the times I didn't want to drive up there to treat his eye that was not healing, the times that I didn't want to head up there just because I felt like I needed to like pick his feet and just look over his body and make sure he was okay, and I'd rather stay home in bed, right? Like I was in compliance doing that. I mean, nobody was forcing me, but it wasn't, awesome. And there were times that he did things for me that he didn't want to do, that he stayed in the arena when he'd point his nose, can we go elsewhere? And I really like, I just had this picture of him going where he wanted to go, where his nose always pointed outside of the arena, free. He is free from his pain. He is free from the suffering that he endured. He is free from the cost of stress and neglect on his body. He is free. And I believe my faith informs me of this, that God made creation, including us as humans in his image, and God made the animals. He's the one that spun the world into being and put the planet into existence and made the animals that we get to dearly love and enjoy. And because of that, I believe God has a place for our beloved creatures that we lose. And I know for many who are not horse people, not dog people, or cat people, it is hard to understand the tears and the sorrow over the loss of an animal. But sometimes, and I've said this to so many people, sometimes it almost feels worse than a human. I don't mean that in a sacrilegious way, but like with an animal who has been so kind and so dependent on you, there is a type of love that I feel like reflects the Father's love for us in a way that in our human relationships, there's a lot more hurt that happens. And grief can be really complicated with the humans that we love because there is the level of disappointments and unforgiveness that kind of can exist there. Now, granted, I suppose that could also be true with creatures like horses because I am grieving the loss of Cody and the loss of what I hoped we were going to have. And also there's a complicatedness to it because caring for him was hard and challenging, and his health issues didn't ever come with like a printout that told me what was wrong definitively. And so there's been a lot of worry and anxiety and questioning and doubt and money and all sorts of things that have gone time that have gone into this relationship that makes it complicated, that with his passing there is a like, oh, and then there's a guilt. I feel relief that he is gone, but while he was alive we were suffering, both of us were suffering in different ways, and so it's complicated. It's complicated, and that is the reason I'm recording this episode of the Liberated Equestrian, is because one of the things that I vowed when I wrote Finding Calm and I started to tell the story of my confidence comeback, my moving through the anxiety and the fear in order to become the horsewoman that I am today and be able to enjoy both riding and horse handling, has been sharing the ups and the downs with Kodiak all along for the sake of others, for the sake of another horsewoman out there or horseman who finds himself in a similar situation and feels all alone. Because in the horse world, there is so much meanness, so much shame, so much guilt, so much animosity. It exists in the whole world, but you feel it in the horse world too. And I want to be that voice, wanted to be that voice of grace and compassion and love and understanding and support and encouragement and inspiration. And so it feels only fitting to share our end of the story, even while it's raw. Some people might say you should wait until this is a little bit buttoned up. And I know there's wisdom in that. Maybe at some point I'll take this down and re-record it. But um, I think that the deepest challenges with grief and loss is that we navigate it alone. And that is not something that is helpful. um, and nobody will love Kodiak as much as I love him. People love me and are sad for me, and the support has been amazing, but nobody will quite love Cody the way I do. And the same is true for you as a horsewoman or a horseman. No one will love your horse quite the way you do. And in that process of trying to make meaning of it, I think that it is helpful to know that even if somebody doesn't hurt like you hurt for your horse, someone hurts the way you are hurting. I'm hurting the way you are hurting, and you are hurting the way that I am now hurting. And in that, there is healing because we need one another. I teach this all the time, right? With my explanation of the brain and the nervous system and the need for connection for co-regulation. We were never designed to do life apart. We need one another and we need our communities. And and so I share that in this vein of the importance of community. And I'm also sharing now here this last episode of the Liberated Equestrian long before I knew I was going to be on this date recording this. I knew that my season had come to shift into stable-minded in a bigger and broader sense, and not narrowing it down to um, one topic or area per se, and not being divided between liberated equestrian and stable-minded, which was beginning to be felt as God was awakening my desire to do more of what is back to my original roots of integrating faith with neuropsychology and bringing this together to help people become stable-minded and live their life with purpose. So, that's what I've been working on behind the scenes the last couple of months, not knowing that I was going to find myself in this place. That's why I released the trailer of for the Becoming Stable-Minded podcast that is now out. It's been out, and new episodes will be releasing in the winter of uh, 2026, I guess, January, February. And that is where the focus is going to be. So if you are an equestrian, I'm still here to support you and to help you navigate life in confidence comeback and in finding calm and horsemanship with connection. And I'm all about that. Uh, but I'm doing that and more under this bigger umbrella of becoming stable-minded. And I'm sure in that space there's going to be more horse stories. My life as a horsewoman is not done. I don't know what it will look like going forward. If I do what I normally do when I'm grieving and feeling a loss, I jump right into the next thing. Uh, and I don't think that's what I'm supposed to do. So my next thing may be a lease of a horse. I don't know what that will look like. I want to continue to keep time in the tack. And my work, of course, keeps me working with horses, doing equine assisted therapy. Um, but there's a lot of pieces in my life, my heart that have been shifting. And this feels part of that shift that I am needing to personally navigate through. So my plan is to continue to explore how I show up in the world, where God wants to heal me, who I'm supposed to become in Him, because His work is never completed until we see Him face to face in the end, in eternity, in heaven. When we know Jesus as our Lord and Savior, that is the promised place. And I am looking forward to that promise being fulfilled. But for now, God has me here to do a work for Him. And I am open to what that looks like. Uh, there's a lot of dying of dreams and dying of hopes that are going with Cody's death. Um, but yet God has promised me so sweetly that new life comes from death, that Jesus Christ, when He died on the cross for the forgiveness of my sin, His death birthed my life anew. When God saved me in 1993 and I became born again, my dad thought I was joining a cult when that happened. I did not join a cult. I became a child of God. When I became a child of God, my life purpose changed, how I saw myself changed, my identity changed, and He has literally been healing me from the inside out ever since. And through that life that Christ paid for has come a marriage that I couldn't have asked for, with a husband that I am so grateful for, children that are my greatest blessing, my grandson. I am looking forward to some wintry nap traps, as they say, with him. And I know that there is more to come even after Cody is gone from this world. I'm still talking in future tense. He is gone from this world. Um, and I thank you for being my community of equestrians there that I can share this with. It is really therapeutic to be able to tell this story and record this for history. One day I want to tell my grandchildren about the remarkable Kodiak Jack, the horse that defied the odds of slaughter and neglect the horse that taught me how to find absolute delight in just being with him, how to giggle like a crazy horse girl, cantering around, pretending like we were on a racetrack. The girl that got to see his love on a trail and remember the days of her childhood when there was regulations for my soul in those hoofbeats. Yeah, Kodiak Jack, remarkable horse that changed my life, and I know changed many others. And I do pray that if you want to do anything in honor of Kodiak, I would encourage you to give to your local rescue. Of course, like that would be a great thing to do. But my heart's desire is to give to the Amy Johnson Research Fund at New Bolton Penn Med to support her work in equine neurological disorders. She's often faced with horses at their last breath, with owners who are exhausted and tired from having tried so many things that have not worked. And it would be really wonderful to see her research expand to find a cause and a way to identify clearly the symptoms and to educate vets to be able to know what they're looking for, and horse owners and trainers. It could change the entire existence for many, many horse owners and trainers and vets. So I pray that if you feel led to give in any way, $25, like, listen, I know the economy is tight, and I know that if you own a horse, they're expensive. And I know that it is more important to put food on a human table, and it is more important to reach the oppressed and the wounded and the hurting of humanity. But I do believe that God made horses, and with that, we are responsible for how we care for them in domestication. And if we have the ability to do better, we should. And so if that is your heart's cry, give to whatever in honor of Kodiak Jack would be really meaningful to me. And feel free to message me and tell me that you have done that. And I would just be so tickled and blessed to know that you are carrying part of his legacy with me. I am so grateful that you have become part of this community and that you have listened and supported me. And I hope that this isn't the end, but continuation. And so head on over to the StableMinded podcast. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, comment, hit a review, leave a review, and join me over there, where I will continue to support you on this journey of not only breakthrough, but becoming stable-minded and living the life of purpose you were always meant to lead. I'll see you there. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast. I'm so grateful to have you as a part of this community. If you loved today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow equestrians. For more information and ongoing support, visit theliberatedEquestrian.us, where you'll find show notes and resources to help you become a liberated equestrian. The Liberated Equestrian Podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The content shared in each episode, including discussions, interviews, and advice, reflects the personal opinions and professional insights of the host and guest. The information provided on this podcast is not a substitute for professional mental health care, counseling, or therapy. Listeners should consult a licensed healthcare professional for specific advice regarding their personal situations. Reliance on any information provided by this podcast is solely at the listener's discretion and risk. While every effort is made to provide accurate and up-to-date information, neither Lisa Pulliam nor the Liberated Equestrian Podcast assumes any responsibilities for errors, omissions, or outcomes resulting from the use of this information. By listening to this podcast, you agree that neither the host, guest, or affiliated party shall be held liable for any damages, loss, or harm arising from the use or misuse of the information presented. If you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please seek immediate assistance from a qualified healthcare provider or call your emergency services in your area. Thank you for listening to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast.